Thank you for having me on, Janet. It's really lovely to be on the show. I'm Dupe Witherick, and I am an alcohol-free wellbeing and transformational coach. And so I specialize in mindset, manifestation, and human design. Sorry. I live in Oxfordshire in the UK, and I have a 10-year-old daughter. She was 10 a couple of weeks ago, so we've got double digits daughter in our house, and my husband and our black Labrador Bentley. So that's me.
So yeah, I was born in Oxford, but
Oh,
now
were
I'm in
you?
Cape Town. So
Yeah,
bit of
amazing,
a move.
amazing. Slight move, yeah.
So talk to us about what age you began drinking and how it evolved over the years.
Yeah, so like many, I probably tried it when I was in sixth form, so 16 to 18, but I didn't really go to many parties or anything, didn't drink a huge amount. It wasn't really there. I was focusing more on A levels and studying, I think, trying to get to the university I wanted to. So I was quite focused and I did. And then that's when it really kicked off. So Freshers Week at university when I was 18 here in the UK, it's a big week and it's the sort of introduction to university. And back then it was very normal to go out and drink every night. And that was your into to
Yeah.
university. I'd say I've always felt that the people around me and were drinking the same as me. I wasn't an excessive drinker. Obviously, over the years, you'd have the odd night where you'd be like hammered and you'd have a binge night or whatever, hangovers, but nothing majorly different to the people I was growing up with. And then I went into the city. I started working in the city and it was similar work hard, play hard mentality. I ended up in management consulting and so worked with clients all over the world. So a lot of business travel and a lot of client dinners and networking events and conferences and various things, and all of which just you seem to have a glass, you seem to need to drink. So for me, it was always that's what you do as an
Yeah.
adult. You need to drink. And there was never really a choice in the matter for me that you couldn't. And then people that didn't drink, I vividly remember when I was at university, I was in the first year, and the hall that I was in, there were probably 180 of us. And I remember only, as far as I was aware at the time, only two people didn't drink. And they were
Yeah.
the people you don't talk to. They were the people that were a bit weird. They were the boring two. And you never saw them in any event, social event, or any sort of interaction with the majorities. That was my logic. That was my belief.
It's crazy, isn't it, Dupe? Just going back to Freshers Week,
Yeah.
I'm a bit out of touch with the UK these days, but I know here in South Africa, some of the Freshers Weeks are actually sponsored by the liquor industry. They can all drink shots till they pass out.
Exactly.
And then it goes on and you get to work and lo and behold, there it is again. Every
Yeah.
client dinner, every bit of business
Mm.
travel. It's amazing how normalized it's become.
Yeah.
10 years ago,
Absolutely.
you had your daughter. So did the
Mm.
mommy juice culture show its face to you then?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember obviously you do the 9 months. I didn't drink at all, of course. But I remember thinking, "Oh, I have a glass of champagne to celebrate." That's
Wet the
what's
baby's head. Why not?
just think it's mad. Oh, I look back and obviously with everything I know now, it just seems so bizarre, but that's what yeah, that was absolutely it. I had quite a few mummy friends. As you met new mummy friends, there's one example I remember our daughters were about to start school, the reception or preschool, so they're about 3. And I'd been introduced from another mummy friend who I'd known since our daughters were born. And I didn't know this new mummy friend. And I went round to her house and you could tell she was a bit sheepish. Is she a tea or coffee person or is she a wine?
Is she like
She
me?
she looked, yes, and she looked at me and she was like, "Do you want tea or coffee or wine?" I was like, "Yeah, of course we'll have a wine." And you could see the relief again. It's this whole perception and
Mhm.
culture that we have that was it. So yeah, absolutely. unfortunately, we're told again that to be a mum, we all deserve wine. We deserve to have that glass of
It's become
wine.
the ultimate parenting aid, hasn't it, really?
Exactly,
Unbelievable.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So no, definitely had that. I stopped drinking in November 2020, and I was only going to stop for 21 days. It was just a, I'll not do it for 21 days. But that was obviously the year that everyone remembers. I certainly remember when we all went into lockdown, the number of WhatsApp memes and the number of people I spoke to who were saying, "Are you having a glass of wine? We need a glass of wine." Everyone was trying to just work out what was going on, as well as children being at home and everything else. So again, it felt like that was another excuse to ramp up the drinking. Was an awareness that was what a lot of people were doing because there were all these messages going up. Then I found myself having a glass probably most nights because I was working quite hard. I think for a lot of us who worked from home, you had to justify what you were doing, and everyone was really working hard. I remember I was working on a project with a Danish company. So it was all via Zoom, and I was on calls from 7 till 7 while trying to check my daughter. My husband was amazing, to be fair. So he did a lot of the whole homeschooling, but the days would just merge into one. The only differentiation was, okay, I'll have a glass of wine because, it's a sort of demarcation. Anyway, I do remember it being a tough time. So it got to November and I celebrated my 40th. I thought, I'm just not enjoying it. It had got to the point where a couple of years before, I used to drink a lot of heavy red wines, and I just found after a glass, I'd get a headache and I just wasn't enjoying it. So I stopped that. And there was no thought of ever stopping drinking. It was,
Oh, no.
I'll go on to the light red wines. And so then I had the Pinot Noirs. And then I was like, these aren't working either. So I'll go on to the white wine. And I was never a huge white wine drinker unless I was being pretentious in a restaurant and having it with fish or something. So I went on to white wines and it just got to the point where I was like, why am I doing this? And so, yeah, I took a 21-day break. The
So
rest
before
is
that, Dupe,
history.
had you
Mhm.
taken any breaks at all? Did you used to do dry January, that sort of
So
thing?
that was the strange thing. I tried to do dry Januaries. I'd stop drinking for Lent, but generally it would go a bit like this. I'd get to Friday and then think, oh, it's the weekend. Maybe I just don't drink on weekends. I drink on weekends, but I don't drink during the week because it's the
The
weekend.
rules.
It's been a busy week and it's that whole moderating, trying to do it that way. So I don't think I ever actually completed a dry January. I certainly didn't do a
During COVID, do you think your drinking, even though it wasn't excessive, but do you think it
Mm.
was evolving a little bit into self-medication?
I don't think I was using it for self-medication at that time. I certainly can think of points when I did use it for self-medication, but
Mm,
I wasn't at that point. For me, I really felt it was just a habit.
yeah.
It was just something I did. My husband would probably say I didn't drink very much in his eyes. At that point, I only really drank gin and tonics and
Mm.
champagne. They were the only two things I could drink at that point.
Good for you
Yeah.
because it sounds like you really picked it up before it developed into any kind of dependence. I wrote an
Yeah.
article, I'm going to send it to you. It's called Smart People Ditch the Booze at 40. So you're one of those smart ones. You see,
Thank
well
you.
done.
Thank you.
So I understand why you decided to quit very sensibly, but and how did you do it? Was it easy for you?
I would say certainly the first couple of weeks, it was boring. It just felt a bit like hard work. I was literally drinking teas and coffees and water, and I just didn't think anyone else was doing anything like this. And out of choice, I'd go to bed early, I'd read a book. I just remember it being a bit, oh, it's a bit of a drag. And I started to change my perspective on it. I found an article about some alcohol-free champagne, alcohol-free fizz, and the person who wrote it was a wine journalist who really knew their wines and was a real very knowledgeable. And she was saying, this is the best alcohol-free wine I've tasted. I remembered we had a bottle in our cupboard. You might be thinking, why have I got a bottle in my cupboard? The reason we had a bottle in the cupboard was that summer. So this was November. And that summer, someone had come round to our house for a meal and brought it with them. And I looked at the person as if to say, what the hell? Especially as they proceeded to then drink our wine. And it's like, why have you brought me that? So I stuffed it in the cupboard. But as I was reading this article, I was like, this looks familiar. I feel like I've seen it. And I was like, did so and so bring that? Is that what's anyway? I rummaged in the cupboard right at the back of the cupboard. What's this bottle? And that for me was a bit of a game changer because, as I said, there was no issue with it, so it didn't trigger me or anything. But I thought, hold on, look, why don't I try this? I had a girls' night happening on Zoom at the time, and we were all going to be drinking fizz. So I just poured myself this glass, and I fully expected it to be awful. I was like, it just for show. I hadn't told anyone I wasn't drinking and didn't want to make a big deal about it. For show, it looked like I was drinking a glass of champagne. And so I thought, fine, I'll do that. And so we all went, cheers. And I went to drink it and thought, I've got to pretend that it's nice, at least from a visual perspective. And it actually tasted really good. And I
Which
had
one
this,
was it? Dupe.
it was
You must
North,
have
Thompson
seen
and
that
Scott.
one.
That was their first, but they now do everything. They do red wine, white wine, rosé. But at the time, that was all that they had. I think it was relatively new. The only thing I think I knew at the time was Seedlip, and I'd heard wasn't great. So that was all that was around as far as I was concerned. And there wasn't much at the time. It's a lot better range now. I'm digressing, but I was a judge on the World Alcohol Free Awards, which is the drink awards earlier this month, which was lots of fun. Personally tried like over 50 products, so you can see the range of drinks that are out there now. So it's really changed in the past three and a bit
Oh,
years.
you must send me that
Um,
list, please, so that I can add
the
it to
award,
this
the
podcast. Yeah.
announcement hasn't
Oh,
happened, but I will send it to you as soon
please.
as it does. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Um,
sounds very interesting.
yeah, so we picked the gold, silver, bronze medal award winners, which was fun. So I had this like epiphany. I was like, if I can drink something that actually looks and in my mind, because says that it's an adult drink and it tastes quite nice and I feel good the next day, why would I keep drinking? So that was a small epiphany, but the reality was there was no way I was not going to drink ever again. That was just not
Hmm.
something I was thinking about. I thought, at least I've got something that I
Mm.
can. So then I looked at alcohol-free gins and I found an alcohol-free gin. That was New London Light at the time, which again was relatively new. So that was one thing. And then I discovered a TED Talk, which was Jolene Park's TED Talk about grey area drinkers. Again, I was like, oh my goodness, didn't know this was a thing. And then discovered another TED Talk, started listening to a podcast. And my eyes were open. And it was this whole, you can actually choose to stop drinking and you don't have to wait until you hit rock bottom.
Mm.
That was just so enlightening to me because I'd always thought people that didn't drink were boring. I was suspicious of them and I didn't really
They
trust
were
them.
either
So,
boring or they were raging alcoholics that had a
yeah,
terrible problem, and you
exactly. Or
didn't
they had a huge
fit in
problem. Yeah,
either. Yeah,
exactly. So, yeah.
interesting.
And then I found the community and yeah, the rest is history, really.
Yeah,
So,
there's
yeah.
a real movement. There's a modern recovery movement these days, isn't there?
Mm,
I quit 9 years ago, and the only
wow.
place for me to go was AA, and,
Yeah.
I went, but it didn't work for me. I didn't really fit. I didn't find
Yeah.
my people, so I
Mm,
carried on looking, and the only thing that I could find that did fit was in London, actually. I went to Club Soda. They had a
oh,
one-day workshop
wow.
back then, so
Thing.
that did it for me. But these days, it's fantastic. There's so many online communities, and we don't have to go to AA if we feel it's not going to be right for us. As you say,
Exactly.
there's so many podcasts, there's so many books. I've also seen Jolene's talk about grey area drinkers, which is great. if anyone's listening to this and they're thinking, what are those ladies on about? Grey area drinkers.
Mm,
What on earth is that? Would you
mm.
like to explain it, please?
Yeah, effectively, it's probably the majority of us. It's really if you aren't teetotal and you haven't hit rock bottom and you feel that alcohol is potentially not serving you in some way, you're on a spectrum of sort of 1 to 10. And so everyone's on that spectrum as a grey area drinker. And so really it's then up to you to decide whether you want to stay on that spectrum, whether you want to not get to the point where you're rock bottom and do something about it, or whether it's working for you and you're able to moderate and do that. Yeah, it's this spectrum that is
Yeah.
pretty much the majority of people.
Yeah.
I was just like, wow, this is really interesting. You said about the 40, smart people stop drinking at 40. It's 45 to 55 where the majority of women especially start getting diagnosed for alcohol-related illnesses. So when I learnt that, I really feel like it was a blessing that I managed to get
Yes.
out of the matrix before
You've
and I
got
can
out
see
of
the
jail
light.
free. Yeah.
Hopefully. Yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah.
spectrum thing is definitely the answer
Mhm.
because there's such a stigma around alcoholism, isn't there?
Mm,
Society's painted the alcoholic as if it's a homeless man in the park, whereas it's much
exactly.
more likely to be a high functioning professional woman in the
Yeah.
city. But because we've got this image, I certainly had it before I started understanding what was going
Mm,
on, because we've got this image, we think, I'm fine. I've got a great job. I've got a nice family. I'm not like that
mm,
guy. I don't have a problem. But in fact, we could be moving up that spectrum. So
mm,
I think this alcohol use disorder spectrum
mm,
is a far more sensible way of looking at it. It's not
mm,
all or nothing. Society says we don't drink and then we're weird. We're like
mm.
those two people in your university hall,
Yes.
or we're a homeless man in the park. But in
Yeah,
fact, most people, billions of people, are in between those two.
yeah,
So,
definitely,
yeah, I think
definitely.
it's a very good way of looking at it. Would you like to share with us your top three benefits of being alcohol free, please?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, there's so many more than 3,
I
but,
know.
uh, it's amazing. I ultimately believe that being alcohol-free is a superpower.
Mm,
So, I think it helps you in so many ways. It gives you clarity, it helps you to be brave and actually realize you can do a lot more than you've given yourself credit for a long time. Another benefit, obviously, from a sort of physical well-being perspective as well, I started running. So I stopped in November. I think I did my first running program in the February. I started it in the February of 2021. And I also started yoga in the January, and I now do yoga. I've been doing yoga since then, pretty much every night. And then from a running perspective, having not run since school, so when I was like 15, 16 was probably the last time I did any proper running. I've run quite a few half marathons, and then I did the London Marathon last year, and I'm doing it again next month. So from a health
fantastic.
perspective, I was always quite into my exercise and health, and I'd been doing that pretty consistently, 5 to 6 days a week of exercise while I was still drinking. But it just gave me another level, I think, and I discovered that I actually have this endurance and I can be committed to stick to something. So being able to actually commit to it and feel good and not
Mm,
worry about the days when you don't feel so great and all of that. So I'd say they would be the 3. And one I will mention, which is I think sometimes overlooked, is just really being aware of the little things. So
mm.
I just love nature now. It can sound, for me, it sounds a bit cheesy, but I do. I love just walking in nature and looking at the trees and looking at the birds. And when I run, just noticing if I see like a rabbit or something in the fields or a muntjac deer, it brings me so much joy.
Yeah.
So the
Um,
little things like that,
yeah.
yeah,
I
just taking that
absolutely
time.
agree with you about those everyday pleasures,
Yeah.
because those of us that got more dependent than you got, our world got very narrow. We were
Mm,
just really interested in either drinking alone or socializing, which obviously meant drinking with our
Yes.
And
Yeah,
the world gets small, but
it
when you
is.
do give up and get over the difficult first few months, it's like the world opens up again and we can enjoy everyday pleasures.
Yeah,
Because if we've been relying on the chemical that is alcohol to make us feel good for years, for decades in my case, we forget how to get a natural high, really, don't we? We forget what we love doing. So we have to explore all of that. It's exciting to discover who we are and what we really want to do.
absolutely. Yeah, that's a real
So,
benefit as well. It's scary for people though, because a lot of people don't know. People that I work with, they
yeah.
get to a point where they've stopped drinking and then they realize they have this time and space on their
Mm,
hands and they think, what am I meant to do now? And they feel
yeah.
almost bereft that,
Yeah, there is a
that
grieving
was,
period,
yeah,
but that's when coaching comes in, isn't
exactly.
it?
Yeah.
Let's talk
Yeah.
about your coaching. Why did you decide to train as a coach?
Yeah. So again, this was one of the, something that came out of me stopping drinking. I'd always done a lot of coaching and mentoring at work, and I completed a number of courses at work. And I always remember this is since my 20s, so it was part of my job. It was something I needed to do, and I coached a lot of women, especially, and mentored a lot of women. But I always remember sitting in these courses and seeing the coaches and just thinking, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. But in my 20s, I remember thinking I was way too young. I needed to wait until I retired. And then I did it. I became a coach then. Then as I went on, I think probably the spark of it maybe went a little bit. And it was just something that I'd do. The courses, I'd still really admire them. But I thought there's no way I'm going to do this. How do these people make any money as a coach? And how did it? I had a whole perception of coaches that maybe wasn't correct. It was the December, yeah, the December. I created a vision board for the next year. I had this feeling I wanted to do coaching. But on the vision board, I'd put on a picture of someone leaping over like a mountain. You've probably seen it, but it's like someone leaping basically. Then I turned the telly on and there was this program called Leap, which was all about coaches. And they'd spent a year with different coaches, spent a year with 4 or 5 people, and they were basically following them to show the power of coaching. I was like, this is amazing. So then I thought, why don't I look and see if, because it was COVID, we were working from home. I thought, why don't I look and see if I can do a coaching course? I've got the time and obviously wasn't drinking. And I thought, I'm going to look and do that. So I started the coaching course in the January. I actually took a lot of holiday to do it just because it was something that I suddenly was remembered I was passionate about. And again, that was transformational. It was a transformational coaching qualification that I did, which was credited with the ICF and a couple of other coaching qualification people.
Mhm.
And I couldn't think of the word. Uh, coaching bodies. Thank you. Is what I was thinking. And it was really great. I did a lot of coaching. I coached people. We obviously had practices internally, but then I also coached a number of people as well for free. I just really loved it. I absolutely loved it. And it was the highlight of my week. So I qualified in, I think, the August officially. There was quite a lot of work you had to do for it. So I was doing this alongside my day-to-day job, but didn't know what I wanted to niche in or anything like that. I just knew
So
coaching.
your coaching was quite general at that
It was
point. It was
transformational coaching, so I could have
okay.
gone into any type of
Mm.
coaching from it, and I hadn't niched at that point. I was probably doing a range of coaching across people looking for new jobs, promotions, as well as life coaching, as I was doing all sorts of coaching at the time. It was a very holistic model, so I did a lot of NLP and everything. It was all under the umbrella, which was it was a fantastic course. But then at the same time, some other opportunities came along, and I was offered an amazing job, and thought, do I do coaching or do I? It's a bit of a crossroads, and I thought I'll carry on in this corporate world because that's what I'm used to and that's what I've always done. And I wasn't quite ready to not do that. And it was a great opportunity. So I thought, okay, let's do that and think about what I do with coaching. And I just maybe do it as a side hustle, as a bit of a something to do. And then I decided as I was going through that year, that seeing all these opportunities just seemed to come my way, that I was like, there is something about not drinking and the world opening up, as you say, and you suddenly think there's something here. As I said, I coached and mentored a lot of women in the corporate world. I was like, I want to tell people about this. I want people to know. So I then decided I'd do a sober wellbeing coaching qualification as well. So I'm a double accredited coach, and that was my niche, and that's how I'm now an alcohol-free wellbeing and transformational coach. It's been amazing because I think for me, it's really given me a sense of purpose and a sense of just wanting to help. So ironically, I did that coaching course, but then I got very ill, even though I'd run the London Landmarks Half Marathon. I'd just finished that coaching weekend, and then we had some things online that we were doing afterwards, but the main body part of it, I'd finished. And then, yeah, the Friday, the day before my birthday, I went to the doctors because I wasn't very well, and they said, "You need to go to hospital now." And so that was just a bit of a, yeah,
Oh, you.
unexpected turn for the books. Yes. Yeah. But again, I would say because I wasn't drinking, and that was wonderful to say I don't drink when you're feeling awful. But also, I think that probably helped me to get through it because I was fairly poorly for about, yeah, probably about 5, 6 months, and they thought it was
Oh,
chronic, and then by some miracle, everything went away. So, yeah, I'm
God.
really grateful. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure we give ourselves a fighting chance if we don't drink and something like that comes
absolutely.
along because our immune system
Yeah.
is so much stronger. That's
Yeah,
why it was
definitely.
crazy during COVID that everyone was, not you, but a lot of people were drinking
Yeah,
so much because we need our immune system to fight COVID. Our immune system treats alcohol like it would treat a disease. So if
yeah.
we're drinking a lot and our immune system is all inflamed, trying to
Mm,
keep us safe from the rigors of alcohol, it might easily take our eye off the ball. And I think that's some of the
exactly.
reasons why so many people got sick with COVID. I'm
Yeah.
sorry to hear you were ill. You're looking great. You look full of
Oh, I'm so
beans
much
and
but thank
life.
you. Thank you. Yeah, it was a
Good,
bit of
good luck
a
with the
it was a bit of
marathon.
a dark time, but yeah, it's yeah, definitely not drinking helped. I'm convinced of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So let's talk about your book. Why did you decide to write a book and who is it for?
When I discovered human design, I realized I'm a manifesting generator. I don't know how much you know about human design, but just in a nutshell, manifesting generator is someone who's multi-passionate, multi-hyphenated, who can do a load of things and doesn't really lose the energy as long as they're enjoying it. So a lot of people like, you've written a book, you started a podcast, you become a coach, you've done this. I'm like, yeah, but that's apparently me. So that made me feel a lot better because I was justifying myself for many years for being a bit weird. And I've now decided I'm going to actually just
Embrace it.
embrace it. Why did I write a book? I loved Quitlet. I discovered Quitlet. I discovered the unexpected joy of being sober and read that and was just again blown away by the concept of it and the fact that actually this could be a good thing. And so then I read a lot of other books. But what I found was that a number of those people had hit rock bottom. We are the luckiest, quit like a woman. It felt a little bit like you had to stop drinking. They had to stop drinking. I wanted to tell a different story and I wanted to encourage people that they can choose and you can give yourself permission to stop drinking because I didn't know that. I didn't believe that at the time that you could actually give yourself
Yeah.
permission to
Well, we're
go
back to
against
that
the
stigma
grain.
again, aren't we? I'm not
Exactly.
like the man
I'm
in the
not that
past.
bad.
I'm fine.
Yeah, exactly. I wrote the book really to encourage people, to educate people, for people that wouldn't potentially do coaching or be able to do coaching.
Yeah.
It's quite a practical book as well. So each chapter ends with questions and an action to take. Include some tools in there as well, and some recipes and some breathing techniques and various other things that people can literally take, hopefully, take the book and get something out of it. And it's based on my Thrive AF method, which is what I use in my coaching, which goes through 3 phases from foundation to first to freedom. So it really walks you through that journey of initially thinking and understanding why you drink and what the reason is why you'd want to stop drinking, thinking about your identity and everything else that's embodied in that. Also, what alcohol is and what it isn't, and what we think it is. Again, giving yourself permission. Then it goes into the first. So, how do you navigate those alcohol-free firsts? I give a number of personal examples of getting through those first. Then, really thinking about what do you do with the time. So, starting to think about building passions and hobbies and developing habits. Then it goes into the freedom part, which is really talking about managing emotions, understanding what your values are, and then thinking about what you want your life to look like now. So visualization and everything else. A lot of people say they give it to their clients and that they've given it to friends as coaches, clients. Yeah, I'm really proud that I managed to do it and it's
Yeah,
out.
sounds fantastic, Dupe. Well done. What's it called?
A cocktail of clarity.
Where do we buy it? Is it
You can
Amazon
get it
or your
Amazon,
website?
yeah,
Right.
from Amazon. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Fabulous. I know you work with mindset, and I'm sure you've read Annie Grace's book a bit,
Yes.
and you've already mentioned limiting beliefs.
Mm,
What mindset tips could you give someone who's drinking too much and needs to change?
mm. We all run our day to day on our subconscious, and 95% of everything we do is based on previous things that have happened, and 5% is conscious. So, really, we need to look at the subconscious and we need to try and work through that. One of the practical tips I would give is really noticing each day, writing down each day, maybe 3 to 5 things that you're grateful for. What you're actually doing is changing your neurons to think differently. And so when you start creating those new good things that are happening when it comes to not drinking, your brain starts to slowly think, actually, just because it's a sunny day, I don't need to have a drink because the last time I didn't have a drink or I had an alcohol-free drink instead, it was actually a really fun summer, and I was chatting to my friends, and I was genuinely belly laughing, or what really describing what it was that you were grateful, and they can be the tiniest things as well as the bigger things that happen as well. So I'd say you slowly start to change your mindset through really capturing what it is. I'd also say, in terms of limiting beliefs, writing down all the things that you think alcohol is giving you, and then exploring whether that's true or not, and
Absolutely.
writing down the facts. So they would be the two that I would
Yeah.
recommend.
Because when we really analyze it, we gain so much more than we lose, don't we, when
Yeah,
we quit drinking? Our fear why
absolutely.
we can't imagine life without alcohol is because we think we'll lose a lot. We'll lose our friends,
Yeah,
we'll lose the ability to have fun, lose the ability to cope with stress. We've got all these fears, haven't we? But as you
exactly.
say, write them down, analyze them, and then
Yeah.
we can just by looking at them, we're shining a
Mm.
light on them almost. So they shrink up like little beasts. That's how I see them. They
Absolutely,
lose
I
their
absolutely
power,
agree.
lose their
They
power.
do. The emperor's not wearing any clothes. Yeah.
Last question, really. If someone's listening to this and they're not quite ready for the mindset work because maybe that's too advanced for them at this stage, but they know that they're in trouble with alcohol, they are getting a bit dependent, what could their first step be?
I always say take a break. Just take a short break. I did 21 days. I do a 21-day challenge that people can do each month that people can jump on. Just take that time to think about what it is. I'd also say to write down, if you are going to take a break and 21 days seems scary or 7 days seems scary or whatever it is, write down your why and know what it is. What's the reason? What is the purpose of you not drinking for X days? And
Yeah,
be honest with yourself, and then keep going back to that on the day you're struggling or in the day, or you get to 5 o'clock, go back to it and think, actually, yeah, I'm going to keep going. And then just decide what you want to do after those days of not drinking. It's just the beginning. And to
I
your
agree.
point,
Yeah.
I don't think you are giving anything up. You're only gaining. Give yourself that chance of experiencing what life could be like without alcohol, if after 90, 100 days you feel like nothing's changed, then go back to drinking. But
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
pretty much promise you'll find that life might be a bit different.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never met a alcohol-free person that said, "Oh, I wish I hadn't given up drinking."
Yeah,
They're all the opposite. I meet people that have had
exactly.
periods of sobriety and then thought they could moderate, so they're in
Yeah,
trouble again. And they
yeah,
always talk fondly about their
they do.
time alcohol free. They say, "Oh, I felt great. I don't know
Yeah,
why I started again." Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. And of course, the other advantage to taking a break is it's a dependence test, isn't it? Because I
Definitely.
didn't realize how hooked I was until I tried to cut down. I
Yeah,
didn't try to stop, I just tried to cut down and I could. So it
yeah.
makes you realize that if there is a problem, oh, there's a problem here, I better deal with it.
Mm.
So yeah,
And I
taking
and
a
I
break is great advice. So final question, how can people find you, Dupe?
so yes, thank you. So you can go to my website, thrivealcoholfree.com. I'm on Instagram at thrivealcoholfree, and I also have a podcast, Thrive Alcohol Free.